Hey there, ladies and gents, welcome back to the vlog. My name is Drew, and this is a pineapple. So, being that I work at a software startup and we are developing a digital food platform, I've had the wonderful opportunity to work with a lot of incredible chefs and learn a thing or two about fresh ingredients. So, in case you didn't know, if you want to check the freshness of a pineapple, you smell it. And you smell for that kind of tropical, citrusy, acidic smell. You shouldn't smell like water or mold because that's typically either backwash from when the pineapples were shipped or GMOs. So an organic, fresh pineapple should always smell like tropical wonderfulness. Also, in case you didn't know, let me see here. I just got back from the grocery store, so these are grapes. And if you want to know if a grape is fresh, you check the stem for greenness. Right in there, that greenness, that's a fresh bunch of grapes, I tell you what. But there is another reason that I started this video in my kitchen, and that is not because my channel has become an overnight cooking channel, although I do like cooking and we will be doing a little bit of cooking in this video. But the real reason is behind me there is a microwave, and on that microwave there is a timer function that you can use to tell time. And today we're going to be talking about time, so I thought that was the perfect segue and the perfect setup. So let's talk a little bit about time and what quality time is and what it means for your startup or whatever you're working on. Alrighty, 4 hours on the clock of braising that beef beast that is in the oven, baking. I couldn't think of a word to describe oven that starts with a B, but if you know of one, leave it down in the comments. So, talking today a little bit about time, and hopefully it doesn't take me 4 hours to make this video, but when it comes to me, you never know. Talking about time and how much time is required to do this, to do that, to have a successful startup, to balance life, everything like that. There's a culmination of a couple different viewer questions that I want to kind of put into this two-part section about the time commitment that's required to run a successful startup or do anything of value, I suppose. And shout outs to Michael T. Michael and my good friend Kyle, who both requested these kinds of videos and asked a couple questions about work-life balance and how much time it takes to get a software project or a software startup off the ground. And so that's the basis of these two videos. So in this first part, we're going to be talking about what time commitments really are. And to kick things off, I know that sounds kind of cryptic, but time is one of the most valuable resources we have as entrepreneurs. If you ask any good entrepreneur, they're always going to want more time. It's not money, it's not space, it's not any of those other kind of earthly things. It's time. They just want more time to do good and amazing things in this world. You can get all the other stuff. I mean, there's always money to be made and there's always space to be bought, but you can't buy time and you can't, exchange time like a currency or a commodity. It's very finite, and finite to the point where sometimes you even have existential crises like I do, because I'm very intimate with the idea of my own mortality and I want to do something with my life before I leave this place, and I want to leave something behind when I kick the bucket, as they say. But all entrepreneurs want more time, and ask any good entrepreneur and they're going to tell you the most valuable resource they have is time and people. People is usually right up there in tie, but time personally is one of the first things that they mentioned in their personal life that they wish they had more of. Really, like I said, time is a finite resource, and you have to make sure that you spend good quality time on your projects and stuff like that. And to give you guys some perspective, I'm going to tell a little story. When I was in high school, I went to high school here in North Texas, and we have a governing board called the UIL. And the UIL basically outlines all of the interscholastic and academic and athletic activities and how they're governed and things like that. I was in high school band, and when we were practicing, the UIL set out what was called the 8-hour rule. And the 8-hour rule basically puts everybody on the same footing. It basically keeps band directors from drilling their kids 12 hours a day after school to work on a show. Basically, the 8-hour rule says within the span of a week, you can only practice up to 8 hours, not including games and competitions and things like that. And the goal behind that is it's to one, prevent, neurotic directors from running their kids all day long, but secondly, it kind of puts everybody on an equal footing. And if you look at the reasoning behind it, the idea being that if everybody's only given 8 hours in a week, the people who put the most quality time and practice the most efficiently will then be the most successful. It's not the person who got to slip in an extra hour here or there, had the best equipment. It goes down to quality. Everybody has the same footing, everybody has the same amount of time. What you do with that time and the quality of the things that you do in that time, I've got a little bit of spice right in my throat. What you do in that time and the quality of what you do in that time is completely up to you. And it's your prerogative, or it behooves you to spend that time qualitatively or with quality. And I will say that I didn't have the best experience with high school band, and no matter if we had 8 hours, 12 hours, or 14 hours, I don't think we could have competed with some of the other bands. And it could have been the other bands were just more disciplined, they had more time, or their programs have been around longer, so they've developed their programs a little bit better. It's hard to say, but inevitably it all boiled down to the time that they were spending was better qualified, or there was more quality put into that time than we were spending at my high school band program. And that really speaks to the overall theme of this episode. And that is that competency is the blend or the meeting place of repetition and quality. So in order to become competent in something, you have to do something repeatedly, and you have to do it with quality. To give you another example, I'm sure any one of you who's had a part-time job can think of a time where things were slow, or you weren't really working on anything, and you were bored out of your mind, and you were wondering why you were there, and you wanted to do so many other different things. That's the perfect example of time that's not spent qualitatively. While you're sitting there and while you're spending time, on paper you spend 4 to 6 hours on a shift, you're not doing any work, so you don't have any fulfillment from that. And so you're spending repetitive time, but you're not spending quality time. And thusly, you don't gain skill or you don't gain competency in your job because you're not doing anything. You're just kind of sitting there. So see how that works? Competency is the intersection of repetition and quality. So again, if you are working on a software project or you're working on anything of merit, you want to make sure that every hour that you spend is quality, because we don't have unlimited time. We are eventually going to leave this earth at some point. So you want to always put quality into whatever it is you're doing. It doesn't matter how many hours you're spending. It could be 4 or 6 hours. You're just sitting there mashing away at some code. And if you're not putting in quality time, or you're taking, I don't want to say take breaks obviously, but if you're taking frequent breaks and not really focusing, then you could spend 8 hours on that same block of code and not get anywhere because you're not spending quality time. That in mind, it makes the question of how much time do I spend on X task, or how do I balance each of these tasks, infinitely more difficult to describe. But I wanted to, again, make the thought or the overarching view of this video not to be how do you organize your time, but how do you spend your time effectively. Because there have been days where I've spent an hour on code and I've completed more in that hour on code than I have in 3 hours on another day. It just depends on the forces and how everything lines up. And again, I don't have like a solid set plan of how to organize each hour of every day, because again, time is or the amount of time spent is kind of irrelevant. It's the amount of quality time spent that is relevant. Rather, what I can tell you is to have a set of priorities and realize that business isn't always the thing that comes first. It's the first of your selected priorities, but it's not the first of your overall priorities. The first of your overall priorities should be your family and your friends. Well, maybe not your friends, but your family. You definitely have family commitments and responsibilities. If you have a family, you've got to make sure that you're taking care of them, or if it's your job to, or if it's your responsibility to go to school every day or to go to work, make sure that you take care of that first. Because again, if your family's not set, then you're going to be in shambles and you're going to be trying to fix your family problems all the while trying to get the software project off the ground or the startup project off the ground. And I'm sorry, but that doesn't take priority over your family. So definitely put family kind of at the front of the queue, or the people that you hold close, I should say, because some people don't have the best of relationships with their families, but anybody that you hold close and you hold dear, you want to make sure that you make time for those relationships, because those are a lot harder to recover than, you know, a setback in business. Usually people will have a faith or some sort of belief system that they ascribe to, and that usually takes some priority as well. So if you put your faith very high, I have my commitments to my church and the youth that I work with and the kids that I mentor, so I generally put that above business. So my list goes family, God, and spirituality, and all the work that I do at church. And then my number one priority, or the number one priority of my kind of selected priorities, and what I mean by selected priorities is the priorities that you set for yourself, the priorities that aren't kind of just set in stone for you by society, because again, you have a societal and a fiduciary responsibility to your family and sometimes to your faith, but after that, you have some choice into what you put priority into. And the first of my selected priorities is obviously mechanics and food for group, because that's my job. And again, these kind of blend together because I have a responsibility to my family to be a producing member of society, not just to be a bum that sits on the couch all day. But inevitably, the way that I do that is from priority number 3, which is food for group and mechanics and running this company. So again, there's no set rubric, but if you have a set of priorities and you realize where you put the most of your quality time into, then it becomes a little bit easier to organize your time. And some days you're going to spend 4 hours on your project or your startup. Some days you're going to spend 30 minutes on your software project or your startup. But inevitably, whatever quality time you can give, no matter how small, to your project is a step forward. Again, quality time, because quality time and repeatedly spending quality time on something leads to competency, and better competency leads to better decision making, which inevitably helps your business in the long run. So you see how everything ties together. So to your question, Kyle, and to your question, Michael, and to your question, whoever is having a similar question on your mind, there's no set rubric for how to balance all these things, but have a list of priorities and make sure that you're spending quality time, because you don't get time back. You can't buy time. You can't trade anything for time. It is the most finite and the most morbid resource that we have, and good entrepreneurs are always wishing for more of it. So remember that competency is the intersection of repeatedness or repetition and quality. And from there, we can move into part 2, which is kind of how you organize, or how much time you need to give yourself, or kind of a timeline, or setting expectations for your software project or your startup or whatever it is you're working on. And I'm going to be looking at it from the purview of a software project because that's what I know most intimately, but you can usually apply the ideas in the next video to just about anything. So I'll give you that little teaser for next time around. But before we get to that, we've got to wrap up today's video, and that is by me saying, always remember, friends, that you are wanted, you are loved, and you are appreciated. You have a special talent that nobody else has, and the world is waiting on you to bring it out. So muster a little courage, go out into the world, and change it. That's what the world's waiting on. You.